Hey guys, I'm your host Tara A. Devlin, and welcome to this week's episode of Kawabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. My latest book, Kawabana Volume 13, is now out. Collecting even more of your favourite stories from the show, you can find terrifying ghosts, cruel curses, haunted buildings, weird monsters, and much, much more. You can find that on Amazon right now, and help support the show at the same time. This week, we're taking a look at people sharing tales of places they perhaps shouldn't be. At least, not if they value their lives. First up, a woman meets a monk on a dating app, but when she shows him a photo of her and a friend on holidays, he reveals something horrifying. Is her friend really cursed? Find out in Childhood Friend's Photo. This is the first time I've written something so long, so sorry if it's a little awkward. I just recently learnt that my childhood friend is possessed by something rather powerful. My friend and I are both women in our 30s. We've been friends since we were children. You often see in threads like this that someone was born to a powerful family in the countryside, or that their family has worshipped a certain kami-sama for generations. But we're nothing like that. We were born and raised in the city. We're not psychic either. My friend doesn't really go out on tests of courage or anything like that, but she does like scary stories. That's about it. Of course, I have no sixth sense either, so I've never felt anything strange regarding my friend, like, she can see ghosts. She's pretty forgetful. Not that she doesn't remember things that happened in the past, but like, when she goes to bed at night, she has already forgotten about all the bad stuff that happened during the day. She's a pretty happy woman in that way. Like, when we were kids and fought, I got really angry, but she would completely forget about things, and that made me even angrier. She also followed her own set of rules, like never getting out of bed during the witching hour, or always praying to Jizo statues on the side of the road. There were other things too, not just these. Anyway, I discovered that my friend is possessed from a monk I matched with on a dating app. Yep, even monks are on dating apps these days. Isn't that interesting? We went on a few dates and the topic of my friend came up at some point, and I showed him a photo we took at the Kegon Falls in Nikko. We were in a cafe and he suddenly spoke so loudly that everyone turned to look at us. "Is she still alive?" he asked. I was like, huh? What on earth is he doing asking if my close childhood friend was still alive? I found him to be quite rude, and I'm sure that showed on my face as well. He apologized and then said, "I can't cleanse people. I'm not quite that strong, but I can sense spiritual things." Apparently, there were numerous arms and hands in the photo, all pulling my friend towards the waterfall. So many that he could barely see anything else. My friend never really changed how she posed in photos. It was always holding both hands up with peace signs, but apparently there were hands grabbing her sleeves, her wrists, her shoulders, etc. Pretty much everywhere but the peace signs. Of course, it looked like a regular photo to me. I'd even put it on Instagram. To be honest, I didn't really believe him. But he continued. "It's the first time I've ever seen anything like this so clearly. Like, I've never seen anything that I thought might be a real ghost photo before. This is the first time," he said, his face turning pale. I was incredibly angry at the time, but looking back on our past dates, he was always honest and a perfect gentleman, so it wasn't like him to joke about something like that. There was no merit to him saying something like that, although I'd understand if he wanted to dump me or something. But after that, it got weird, and I ended up going home, even though we were supposed to go out for dinner. And then we kind of drifted apart. Curious, I called my friend that day to see how she was, but she was out on a trip with her boyfriend, and she didn't feel any different to usual. And here I was, doing my best to find dates on a dating app. It honestly made me kind of mad. Anyway, that all happened last year. This year, that monk contacted me once again. He said he couldn't stop thinking about my friend in that photo, so he spoke to his father, the chief priest of the temple, about it. His father suggested actually meeting the woman he was so concerned about, so he asked if I could bring her around sometime. Honestly, I was kind of like, now? Really? My friend was perfectly healthy, and it felt weird bringing it up with her now too. I spoke to another friend about it, and they were like, nah, on the contrary, she always seems to have the best luck. We couldn't think of anything that had ever happened to her that might have been like a curse. Still, it's not every day you get to talk to a chief priest, and the monk was handsome, so my friend said I should take her with me so we could reconnect. And so I asked her, I met this monk on a dating app. Would you like to come with me and meet him sometime? I asked her. And she immediately replied, okay. Well, I thought that maybe I could still go out with him despite the thing with the photo. I still didn't have a boyfriend at the time, and well, I still don't have one now either. But at any rate, I looked up how much it would cost for an exorcism, and it wasn't an amount I could afford. But I didn't want to ignore matters and maybe see my childhood friend die, so... Anyway, I went with my friend to the temple on my day off recently. They told us what time to arrive, but I thought it would be best to beat the worshippers, so we got there a little early. I mentioned to my friend that we should pray first as well. But as soon as we entered the temple grounds, someone who looked like the chief priest approached us. Thank you for coming, he greeted us. If he weren't bald, he would have been a handsome old man. He took us past the shrine office area where they sell charms and such near the entrance. We then went into a Japanese-style room, about 20 tatami mats large, with nothing but desks and chairs. Kind of like a banquet hall, I guess. Soon after, the monk, the one I matched with on the dating app, came in and put out some tea and sweets for us. The chief priest, monk, my friend and I all sat down facing each other, and as we struggled to find a way to start, my friend broke the ice. I thought we were just going to have a quick standing conversation, so I didn't bring any gifts, sorry. Thanks to that, everyone started chatting cheerfully. I enjoy traveling, so I went to Kyoto recently, my friend said. Oh yeah? Where did you go? The monk asked. I rented a kimono and just walked around, she said, taking her phone out and showing the monk and his father a photo. Their faces instantly hardened. I'd seen the same photo on Instagram, but there wasn't anything particularly special about it. That's wonderful. Is that Kifune Shrine? Yeah. It was really hard climbing and going down the steps in Geta shoes. My friend hadn't yet realized that the monk and his father were both pale, like that day I showed him the other photo. But after that, for some reason, they never spoke of what was going on with the photos, and instead kept chatting. I don't want to ruin the mood or anything, my friend said, but do you happen to know any scary stories? As I said, she quite enjoyed those types of tales. In the end, I wondered if they'd maybe perform an exorcism or something, but nothing happened, and then it was time to go. They were so nice, my friend said. It's a pity he was bald, but I guess it beats actually watching them lose hair. She was incredibly casual about the whole situation, That night, the monk called me and asked me all sorts of things about my friend, although he didn't ask for any personal details. He asked if she'd done something like this or that in the past. He was pretty accurate, like to the point where I wanted to ask if he was a fortune teller or something. He asked whether she'd been in danger, but had somehow managed to avoid it. Stuff like that. I could remember several instances like that. First was in elementary school. I was walking towards the station so I could go to cram school, and a strange man approached my friend. A creep, I thought, and I called out to my friend. The man then quickly disappeared. I asked who he was and she just said, "A stranger." Looking back on it now, it gave me chills. I remember her mother giving me an expensive cake as thanks. Another time, several years ago, there was a shooting at a school overseas. My friend was attending a nearby university at the time, so I called to make sure she was okay. "That sure was scary," she said, but she was uninjured. I also mentioned to the monk that my friend tends to quickly forget things by the following day, but he said that was perfectly fine. I asked him what it all meant, and he said that I didn't have to believe him, but they believed my friend had an incredibly powerful guardian spirit. Not even the chief priest knew what the spirit was, nor why it was attached to my friend. Perhaps it just felt comfortable with her, he said. So, the reason my friend had such good luck was because of that guardian spirit. When a normal person encountered something so dangerous that they might die, this guardian spirit stepped in and protected her. Because it was so comfortable with her, when other good or bad things got too close, it repelled them. That was why there were so many hands clinging to her in that photo by the waterfall, but she was never cursed. Oh yeah, and apparently in that photo she showed them of Kifune Shrine, she was surrounded by women in white clothing, kind of like a group of sadakos. In the chief priest's opinion, he felt the guardian spirit was comfortable with her because it gelled with the rules that she set for herself. Like I wrote at the start, she doesn't get out of bed during the witching hour, and other stuff like that. But at the same time, he felt that perhaps she had those rules in the first place because that's what the guardian spirit wanted, and it made sure she didn't do things it was uncomfortable with. They didn't know who or what the guardian spirit was, but either way, they were apparently on the same wavelength, and so they got on great. However, it seemed the spirit didn't want my friend to know of its presence, so it asked them not to tell her about it. How they spoke to the spirit, I have no idea. And so, we've never said anything to her about it, but it would appear that my friend has an incredibly strong guardian spirit with her at all times. Next, 3 friends gather one night for a few drinks and a few scary tales. But is something really haunting their friend's house? Find out in Strange Presence. This happened when 3 of us guys got together at a friend's house to drink. It was right around this time of year, so we decided it would be the perfect time to tell some scary stories with our drinks. Kind of like a ghost special corner on TV. But of course, none of us were professionals. Not only that, none of us had ever experienced anything supernatural. And we were pretty drunk too, so it was difficult to expect any good stories. The stories were all the typical ones you might have heard anywhere, the type that made it hard not to make snarky comments. As I was getting bored with the idle chatter, one of my friends started yet another story. So, a while back, when I was in my room, I sensed this strange presence. The way he articulated his words was a little dubious. "What do you mean, a strange presence?" B interjected. "Like, someone else was in the room with me. Of course, I was alone at the time." I laughed. What a cliché. "Just shut up and listen." So anyway, I could sense something really strange, right? How can I put it? Like a gaze. Like someone looking at me. Something like that. "You're not going to tell me it was the mirror, are you?" "No, I don't have a mirror, remember? Plus, the gaze was coming from behind me. Behind me. I was on the computer at the time, sitting in my chair, you know? And so, right behind me was the window." "What, so it turned out to be a cat on the veranda or something?" I asked, but my friend shook his head. "No, at the time the curtains were closed. There was no way you could see in or out. But like, it was through the cloth, you know? How strong does a gaze have to be that you can feel it through that?" He gave a bitter smile and continued. "So, I thought I might just be imagining things, but it was still weighing on my mind, you know? That was why I thought I should check the veranda, just in case. I didn't want it to be a thief or anything." B and I remained silent, and our friend continued, with his shoulders slouched forward. "I stood in front of the curtain, and all sorts of things went through my mind. When I opened it, would I see a woman glaring back at me? Stuff like that. I was kinda nervous, but I still had to know, you know? So I readied myself and opened the curtain. And then..." B and I both gulped. "And then, nobody was there." "What the hell? So, in the end you were just imagining things?" B sighed in disappointment. I also felt stupid for getting nervous over nothing. When people relax after being nervous, they breathe a sigh of relief, right? Their shoulders drop and they look down at the ground and such, yeah? I guess. I mean, I don't know. So then, there it was. What was? B and I asked frankly at the same time. A woman. She was tightly gripping the hem of the curtain. Half her face was poking out between that empty spot between the bottom of the curtain and the floor. She was staring at me. No expression on her face. Kind of like a reptile or a bug or something. Just nothing in her eyes at all. Then the words escaped my lips before I could stop myself. "Ugh, so you were down here." B and I remained silent. After that, I don't know if I passed out or not, but when I opened my eyes, it was morning. So, I guess it really was a ghost or something like that, huh? After he said that, he laid down on the floor, I guess because he'd had so much to drink, and then he immediately fell asleep. B and I, both feeling more than a little creeped out, looked at each other. "What should we do?" B asked, a strange look on his face. What should we do? I mean, it was a fake story, right? What could we do about it? I said as much to him. Yeah, but, you know. We both turned to look at our friend, the owner of the apartment we were drinking in, and the guy who had heartlessly fallen asleep before us. We finished up the rest of the drinks and then went to bed. In this next story, 2 university students go for a drive in the mountains while looking for somewhere to hold their summer camp. But while they're out there, they stumble upon a location that should perhaps best be left unknown. Find out why in Welcome to. It's not like anything actually happened there, but I visited this place that kind of gave me the chills, so I thought I'd write about it here to see if anyone else knew about it. I don't really have a sixth sense, so I can't say for certain whether that place was scary or not. And I don't want to be rude to the people who live there. But if anyone's interested, I'll tell you the name. On the other hand, if you think I shouldn't air the name in public, then I'll keep it to myself. Also, I'm not a very good writer, so please forgive me. So, this happened around the start of summer during my 3rd year at university. Around June or July, I think. I was the chief secretary of our club, and I was travelling around in a rental car with a friend who was 1 grade above me, looking for a place we could hold our summer camp. Tests were soon coming up, so honestly, I had to study as well, but the deadline for making reservations was quickly approaching. As such, I had to find somewhere that was cheap, had places we could visit during the day, and was quiet at night so we could study as well. On that note, I was part of a humanities club, so it was basically a study camp where we could hang out too. My senior had already managed to find a decent job for when he graduated, despite the job drought at the time, so all he had to do was kick back and enjoy the rest of his time at university. And because I, sadly, didn't have a license, he agreed to drive. We had decided to have our camp in the mountains around Niigata or Nagano. We had already received a list of places we could stay in, so we went around to each one, checking the traffic, whether it was easy to reach any sightseeing spots, etc. I remember that it was particularly sunny at the time. Unlike Tokyo, there were no tall buildings around, so the sunshine pleasantly filled my vision. The sky was blue, and I could see the world spread out before me, and it was like I was being cleansed of all the dirty air we always breathed in. "What a nice drive," I said to my senior with a smile. But then, suddenly everything went dark, and a chill ran down my spine. My hands suddenly felt cold too. The weather, that had just been pleasant and sunny, immediately turned cloudy. We were on a mountain road, so in the mountains, so perhaps the weather changed more quickly up there. "The weather changed, huh?" I said to my senior in the driver's seat. "Yeah, but don't you think it's weird?" He looked confused. The mood also felt different, but I remained quiet and continued looking out the window. "Whoa," I said before I could stop myself. "What is it?" my senior said, stopping the car. There weren't any traffic lights or other cars, so stopping suddenly was no problem. "Eh?" he then said, surprised. It seemed we'd entered somewhere new. There was a "Welcome to" sign, but the letters on it looked really creepy, and there was weird art around the place as well. Normally, letters on a sign would use regular Gothic font or something, but how can I put it? They were kind of like the letters you'd see in a comic book or something. It was an old sign, so maybe the rain had warped the letters over time. But it didn't really look that way. I think the letters had always looked like that. And as for the art, the trees had faces painted on them. If I had to compare them to something, they were kind of like that tree enemy from Kirby's Dream Land. At any rate, there were 2 black circles like eyes, a nose, and a pitch black mouth. It kind of looked like it was smiling, but it was more mocking or creepy than cheerful. It was a twisted, pitch black mouth. And around all that artwork, there were more signs. they didn't really look like signs or artwork that was actually welcoming. "What the hell? That's creepy," I said. "We should probably get out of here as soon as possible," my senior said. We considered turning around, but that would mean we'd have to go the long way to our destination, and the rental car didn't have a navigation system at the time, so we feared getting lost. As such, we decided to keep going straight. The road was a straight line with the occasional rice fields or houses along the way. The sky remained cloudy, and there wasn't a single other person on the road. It was also so cold that I asked my senior if he could turn the car's air conditioning off. "Yeah, no problem," he said, looking cold as well. And before long, it started to get foggy too. "Oh wow, now it's foggy," I said. "The weather can change quickly in the mountains. I wouldn't think too much of it. For now, why don't we sing a song or something?" "Huh? You want to sing a song? Now?" I said, surprised. "It'll liven things up," he said. I didn't know what to sing, but we started singing Space Battleship Yamato. What fools. I put a lot of power into my diaphragm and sang as loud as I could, but I still felt cold. And I was scared. "Are we not out of there yet?" I asked. "I don't know," my senior replied. But he seemed to have noticed something, so I followed his gaze. On the left-hand side of the road, there were 10 or so Jizo statues lined up. There was nobody around. We hadn't seen anyone walking, nor even any other cars. And yet, they were adorned with beautiful flowers. So it hit me that people really must live somewhere nearby then. But when I looked closer, I realized the Jizo statues were a little different. They didn't have heads or hands. Maybe we could have gotten out to check, but we were so creeped out that we just wanted to get away from there as soon as possible. So we kept driving. Then, after we passed through the valley, "Ah, it's sunny! Look, the sun's out!" The sky was sunny and blue, just like it had been before, like the clouds had never even existed. Bit by bit, I could feel the chill leaving my body. "Oh, thank God, we made it." We were both happy and worked up. Nothing happened after that. We decided on a location for our training camp and went back to Tokyo. I couldn't help but wonder what that place was though. What on earth was that? Do you think we should look it up? I asked my senior. "No, I think we should just leave it alone," he said. Perhaps he was right, and roughly 10 or so years have passed since then. By the way, I pretty much have zero sixth sense. My family home has a small shrine, but only rarely, very, very rarely, do I ever see anything. So maybe I was just overthinking things. But that's it. I thought I'd write about it here just in case anyone knew about that area, or what the Jizo statues might be. Thank you for reading. Finally this week, a man who has lost all will to live finds himself in a strange world that mirrors our own. There, he makes some confusing and horrifying discoveries, and realizes that his life isn't the only one affected by the choices he makes. What's really going on? Find out in Reality and Shadows. This happened to me about 20 years ago, when I was still in university. My first 2 years there went well, but at the end of my second year, my beloved younger sister died in an accident. We had a big age gap, but we were especially close. You could even say she was my everything. My school life was miserable after that, and I stopped showing up to classes and also looking for a job for after graduation. I was able to start my 4th year without having to repeat, but I didn't have enough credits to graduate. I had to repeat my final year and suffer the shame of doing so. I'd lost my beloved sister. I didn't see the value in anything before me. I barely went to school, and all I did was spend the money I got from my part-time job. Those days didn't last long, however, and I was made redundant. Looking back on it now, losing my job was such a minor thing, but without any money to play around with, I thought there was nothing left to live for, and it was time to end matters. One evening, as the sun was setting, I took what little money I had left to a hardware store and bought some rope before returning to the apartment where I lived alone. I should have gone back to my parents' house and talked to them, but because I had to repeat a year, my relationship with my parents was rather cold, and I found it hard to go back. But most of all, I didn't want to go back to the one place that reminded me of my sister. At first, I planned to take the train to a famous spot and end things there. I didn't have my phone or anything else that could identify me with me. From the bottom of my heart, I just wanted to disappear. So perhaps somewhere deep inside, I longed to return to the earth as someone nameless, an untended grave. But things never go the way you want them to. After the sun had set, I got off at the nearest station and saw 2 men in suits. I tried not to make eye contact with them, but it seemed I failed. Nothing they said made sense, and I think they were probably drunk. I tried to leave the station before things escalated, but I immediately felt a pain in the back of my head, and everything went white. I fell to the ground, and then they started kicking me with wild abandon. To be honest, I was annoyed, but at the same time, I also thought that maybe it wouldn't be so bad to die this way. After a while, they got sick of kicking me and then wandered off somewhere, making strange noises. It was late at night at a rather small station, yet there were still quite a few people there. Yet not a single one seemed to notice me lying on the ground. The coldness of the violent drunks and the passers-by who did their best to ignore me hardened my heart even more and made my decision unshakable. I got up and left the station, dragging my aching body away. After that, I didn't really remember much, maybe because I had been beaten up or maybe because my mental state was burnt out. At any rate, I arrived at my destination in the woods and, after taking a cursory glance around, I threw the rope up and over a branch. I was obviously not in a right state of mind, and all I could think of was how quickly I wanted everything to stop. I can't describe it very well, but it was like when you're having a nightmare and you want to wake up as soon as possible, but you keep going back and forth between the dream world and the real world. Honestly, it was all I could think of. I really don't remember what happened after that. All I know is that I did end it. But when I came back to, I was in a city somewhere. It was a regular city that might be anywhere in Japan. There were burger shops and large buildings and regular streets. And there were regular people walking around too. But one thing was clear. I wasn't in the same world I had just been in. The writing on the signs was backwards, and looking closely, the traffic lights were backwards as well. The cars were also driving on the right side of the street. Forgetting everything that had just happened, I looked around in confusion. Next thing I knew, a small boy stood before me. He seemed different to everyone else. He had blonde hair, green eyes, and was wearing a kimono like that from the Shichigo-san festival, with leather shoes tied up perfectly. The boy looked up at me in silence, before finally speaking. "Hello," You came from the real world, didn't you?" "Huh?" I had no idea what he was talking about. I thought maybe he was just repeating something he heard in a cartoon, so I ignored him and tried asking a passing woman who looked like an office worker where I was. But she didn't seem to hear me at all. I called out to a few more people, but none of them seemed to hear me either. Losing my temper, I went to grab an old man walking past and make him notice me, but then I suddenly lost my balance. My hand went right through his shoulder. I had no idea what was going on. Then I heard a voice from behind me. "They're shadows, so you can't touch them." I turned around and that boy was smiling at me. A chill ran down my spine and I took a step back before I could stop myself. Seeing that, the boy grinned and said, "Follow me." He then turned and started walking away. To be honest, I wasn't scared of him and I had nowhere else to go, so I decided to follow him. He walked ahead of me without saying a word. Everything looked like a mirror world. It was all backwards and honestly creeped me out a little, so I focused on just looking at the kid's back. Then, suddenly, he stopped and turned around. A mischievous smile rose on his face, and he showed me the bottom of his right shoe. Suddenly, I felt sick. On the bottom of his shoe, there were 2 squished grasshoppers. I stood on them just before. Well, they won't affect too much, so it's fine. I wanted to understand what he actually meant by that, but he immediately started walking again. And after walking for around an hour, we arrived at a small hospital. Even though it was small, it was bustling with nurses, patients, and people visiting the sick. The boy took me to a private room that looked like intensive care, and there was a girl around junior high age lying in a bed. She didn't look at all like my sister, but for some reason, she suddenly came to mind. Her arms and head were covered in bandages, and she had a ventilator on as well. It wasn't hard to guess that she was in grave danger. "Why did you bring me here?" The boy said nothing. "What's wrong with this girl?" I asked before I could stop myself. "She's hurt." "I can see that, but why?" His short answers that never got to the point were annoying me. Finally, after another short silence, he spoke. "To tell you the truth, you hurt yourself. That's why your shadow, this child, is like this." "Huh?" Reality and shadows are 2 sides of the same page. They overlap and influence each other, like the heads and tails of a coin. The boy then continued. I might not be able to explain it very well, but I'll do my best to write down what I remember. The world I came from, let's call it A, was the real world. In contrast, the world I was now in, let's call it B, was the shadow world. The real existences in world A were linked to shadows in world B, and they influenced each other. For example, let's say that a regular man in real world A was linked to a woman in shadow world B. If the man was seriously injured in a traffic accident, then the woman in the shadow world would also be seriously injured. As such, if the man in the real world died, the woman in the shadow world would die too. The reverse was true as well. However, those linked didn't have to be the same species, meaning that humans could be linked to bugs, or even plants. Meaning that if a weed in Shadow World B was pulled out, and it was linked to a person in Real World A, then that person might suddenly die, seemingly for no reason. But even though the real and shadow worlds were linked, they didn't share the same space and never directly interacted. And it seemed I had somehow found my way into the shadow world. Listening to him talk made me feel like I was losing my mind, but finally I reached a single conclusion. So, what you're saying is that I'm linked to this shadow, this girl. That's right. You're on the verge of death in the other world, so this girl is as well. His expression didn't change as he spoke, but then suddenly, the girl in front of us quickly changed for the worse. She struggled to breathe and writhed in pain on the bed. Again, I remembered my sister and ran into the hall to call for help. But unlike when we arrived, now there was nobody there. Regardless, I still ran around screaming for help. But the hospital really was empty. And I suddenly realized that I was from the real world. I couldn't affect the shadow world, meaning I couldn't call for help anyway. Do you want to save her? Suddenly I heard a voice behind me and I turned around. That boy was standing there. Again, an image of my sister quickly came to mind. Her face overlapped with that of the girl in the room, and she really did seem just like her. I turned to the boy. What can I do? It's simple. You're her link in the real world, so all you have to do is return and recover. You're linked to each other. If she's not dead yet, it means that you're still alive over there. You still have time. It's not much, but the least I can do is help with that. I don't really understand, but I want to help her. Well, it all depends on you. As we were talking, the girl's condition continued to get worse, and I could hear her screams from the hall. Before I could stop myself, I grabbed the boy's shoulders. I don't care what you do, just do something. You won't do that ever again? That. I didn't have to ask what he was referring to. I remained silent for a moment before answering. Yeah, I won't do that again. I'll be strong and live for my sister as well. So please, help that girl. This is the only time I'll do this for you, okay? After that, it's up to you if you want to help this girl. The moment he finished talking, my consciousness faded away. When I came back to, I was lying in a hospital bed. Apparently, I was quickly found in the forest by a man walking his dog, and although I was on the verge of death, I managed to regain consciousness again. I didn't recognize the view outside the window, but the letters on the signs were the right way around, so that was proof enough I was back in the real world. For a while, I wondered if it had all been a dream, but a newspaper I read in the hospital changed my mind. During the few days I was unconscious, 2 businessmen died mysterious deaths. I checked their photos and they were without a doubt the 2 men who attacked me at the station that night. They were in entirely different places at the time, yet they both died the same mysterious death. They were crushed, as though something had stepped on them from above, even though there was nothing else around. I remembered the 2 grasshoppers that the boy had stood on. It was a little much to be a coincidence, so that world couldn't have been a dream, I thought. Were those 2 men linked to the grasshoppers? That boy's words still lingered in my head, even now. Well, they won't affect too much, so it's fine. What on earth did that boy really want to say? After that, I left the hospital, graduated from university, and although it took me a few years, I managed to find a job as well. Working life has been much harder than I expected though, so it's hard to say that it was a happy ending. I said that I would live for my sister, but recently, I've started to wonder if maybe it would have been better if things did end back then. And, as if in response to that, recently I've been feeling strange pains in my chest, like my heart is tightening or something. Maybe that girl, my shadow in the other world, is on the verge of death. I feel bad for her, but at the same time, I wouldn't be upset if she quickly passed either, because that would mean I get to see my sister again soon. No matter how much I try to move past it, in the end, she was everything to me. I can't live without her. So, I guess that's how it is. The pains in my chest continue day after day, with each day worse than the last. Recently, I've started vomiting blood too. I've been going to the hospital, but they haven't discovered the cause. I don't think I have much time left. But don't feel bad for me. It'll be over soon. Still, who on earth was that boy? I don't know, but maybe I'll get to see him again soon. A huge thank you and shout out to this week's Cummy tier members, Christina, Just Sawn, Estash, and Emerald. It's thanks to your support, along with everyone else, that I'm able to keep doing this show, so thank you very much. Don't forget to check out Kowabana Volume 13, out on Amazon right now, and check out our newly revamped merchandise store at kowabana.store. And if you'd like to chat about this week's stories, come and join us in the Kowabana Discord. You can find that link in the description or on kowabana.net. You can also check out our Patreon at patreon.com/Tara A. Devlin for exclusive bonus stories and extras, or our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Kowabana Japan for all sorts of Japanese horror you won't find anywhere else. Thanks guys, stay safe, and I'll see you again next time for even more Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Want even more scary stories? Head over to kowabana.net for new translations every week. You can also join our Patreon for exclusive stories you won't find anywhere else. Head over to kowabana.net now.